So I have a lot of experience in terms of how, what different types of things can come up when we're working with associations and what problems we see time and time again. And what are the most common reasons that associations get sued? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Some topics we're going to cover today are the importance of having good communication with your owners, using licensed and bonded contractors, how to handle architectural requests, because those seem to be a pretty litigious subject, making sure that you're getting audits, reviews, and compilations annually for your association. What is a reserve account? How do you fund the reserve? What is a reserve study? Defamation, what to do if somebody's accusing you of defamation, how to stay out of trouble so that you're not being accused of defaming anybody else, and really much more. One more thing I want to mention. So I always like to know who is in my audience because I can't see you in person today. I miss seeing you. Normally I've got a lot of people that come to all these classes every year. So I miss seeing your faces. I miss talking with you in person and answering your questions after class. But just to help me better understand who's in the audience today, and I understand we have an enormous crowd, so that's great. I'd like to just poll who is present here today. So I have a little poll that we're going to be putting up there. So the poll just closed and the results are, we have 70% of you are board members, 19% are interested homeowners, 5% are managers, and then we have another category that's also 5%. So great. So we have, a large representation of board members here today, and that's great because the topic that we're going to be discussing, these are really tips so that you stay out of trouble and so that you have a pain-free time on the board, if that's possible. Stress-free, pain-free, worry-free. So I'm going to try to give you some suggestions so that you can make good decisions for your community and have a lot less hassles as you're serving in this volunteer role. Okay, so let's start out. The topic, of course, on everybody's mind right now is COVID and how that's affecting all of us on a daily basis. I want to just give you just kind of a little update on what's been going on in Arizona and how that may impact associations. On Monday, the governor of Arizona conducted a state of the state. He continued to stress the importance of getting the vaccine out to residents in Arizona as quickly as possible, and stated that mass vaccinations are going to start to bring Arizona out of the pandemic, which is a good thing. Obviously, this has been a very long 10, 11 months. The governor also announced that State Farm Stadium, the home of the Arizona Cardinals, is going to be a 24/7 vaccination site, which is great news. In addition to talking about the vaccine in the state of the state, which is truly the most important speech that the governor makes at the beginning of each year because it tells us what his priorities are. In addition to focusing on COVID, he also talked a lot about our economy in Arizona, education, mental health, and he reiterated his opposition to further lockdowns. So it appears that there won't be any further lockdowns in Arizona in the future. So what I think we can take from the governor's state of the state this week is that the pandemic is clearly going to shape the 2021 legislative agenda in Arizona. And we're going to talk in a minute about what to expect this year in the legislature, just because I think it's a really important topic for us to keep an eye on. And I'm going to be coming back again here for the city of Scottsdale to teach another class, and I'll continue to give you updates on what's going on with the new legislation. Okay, first things first, let's talk a little bit about Prop 207, the marijuana legalization initiative. This is really a hot topic for a lot of associations right now, so I just wanted to spend a few minutes discussing it. So as you know, probably from the news media reports, Prop 207 was approved by 60.3% of yes votes. And Prop 207, what it is it legalizes and governs the adult use, regulation, and taxation of recreational marijuana. And some associations are probably wondering right now, well, how is that going to impact our association, whether you're a homeowner or whether you're a board member that's listening in here today on this call? And so basically, how that's going to affect, residents and associations is that, we're going to have to determine whether people are going to be smoking marijuana on common areas, and that's going to potentially bother other residents? Are there going to be residents smoking marijuana within their units? And they are also bothering other residents through the smoke going through the different air ventilation system. So these are all important issues for associations, and just some feedback on this that I'd like to give you today would be this. Marijuana in common areas, the association clearly has the right to pass rules regarding the use and enjoyment of the common areas. If this is a concern that you think your association may see in the future, you may want to amend your rules to include that. So that is part of your rules for your association. You may want to take a wait and see approach, because it generally is going to be covered. I'm sure you already have a no smoking rule in your association common areas. It should be covered under that, but you may need to add some specific things to that going forward. Let's also talk a little bit about what to do if you have an owner who's smoking marijuana in a condominium and their shared ventilation system. We have had a number of cases like that in our office over the years that have resulted in litigation. So basically what I think you need to do is communicate with the owner. As soon as you receive a complaint, communicate with the owner or resident that is smoking marijuana and that's, causing another person to not be able to, peacefully enjoy their property. You may need to consider an outright ban on smoking within your association inside in a condominium. Those are rare, but it's something that you may want to consider doing. But the key thing is when you start getting complaints, this is something that the association would need to act on, whether it's complaints regarding the common area or complaints regarding another owner not being able to peacefully enjoy their property because of marijuana smoke or cigarette smoke. Just so you know, Scottsdale adopted an ordinance on marijuana, and I believe that we're going to be able to share that with you in our comment section here in a minute. But basically, it just clarifies what the city of Scottsdale's position is on smoking in common areas or public areas in the city of Scottsdale. And so it's important you may want to take a look at that because most of you here today probably are from Scottsdale. I believe also that we're going to be doing a poll right now because I'm interested in hearing, since this is such a new topic, I'm interested in hearing what all of you have to say about whether you think smoking marijuana in units or on common areas are going to be something that your association may need to address here in the very near future. So if you wouldn't mind answering our quick poll for us, yes, no, not sure. Have you already had the problem since Prop 207 passed? We're interested in finding out more, so let us know. Okay, so the results are in. So 42% of you say that yes, you do think this is going to be a problem. 22% say no, 36% say not sure. So all this is really good feedback for us as we start to help associations, as we navigate, the new issues that may come up with the legalization of marijuana and Prop 207. Okay, let's switch gears now and talk a little bit about what to expect in 2021 in our legislature. I'm just going to adjust my screen here for 1 second. Okay, perfect. And so what are we going to do with this year's legislature, right? It's going to be such a unique year with the pandemic. They're already saying that participating in legislative hearings is going to be different than prior years and social distancing. Being able to go down to the Capitol and meet with our legislators to talk about HOA and condo issues is going to be quite different this year. So here's what I expect to happen this year. First thing I'd like to say is I think we have to look at what happened in 2020. There were no new bills pertaining to HOAs and condos in 2020. Obviously, that was because the legislature had a very short session. They passed a skinny budget. They did not reconvene in the summertime like we thought they might to go back and address other bills that were introduced but had not been passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor. So I think the best advice that I can give associations as we kind of prepare for 2021 legislature is we got to look at what happened in 2020. And the bills that were introduced in 2020 really are likely to be reintroduced this year. And so some quick thoughts about, what we think will happen this year. I think we'll see some correction bills. One of the correction bills for sure that we're going to see some action on is the bill on the statements that was passed several years ago that requires every association to send out a statement to all owners every time there's a billing cycle for the association. And for many associations, that is in fact, every single month. And so what the proposed legislation last year was to limit that to only to delinquent owners every month, and then to all other owners who are not delinquent just once a year. And that's a really important bill for associations. And here's why. Because this is a huge expense for associations. And if this continues to go forward, this is going to be something that is going to have a financial impact, and it just doesn't even make sense to be sending a ledger to people who are current. In fact, it was confusing a lot of people when the new law was passed. And so that's something that's definitely going to need to be corrected. We're already seeing this year, we saw a bill already introduced on peaceful assembly in an association and being able to put out political signs for issues pertaining to the association, which is just kind of crazy, right? If we have a recall petition going in your association, we're going to have, political signs being allowed in your association during that recall, or other things that might be going on in your association. I think we're going to see some additional restrictions on open meetings. And I think the bill allowing people to write in candidates' names is going to be something that will be introduced, in this year's legislature. So stay tuned. Our firm posts a weekly update while the legislature is in session. And I encourage you to check our website at mulcahylawfirm.com to get information on that each week as the legislature progresses. And then each week that's updated. And at the end of the legislative session, we do a cheat sheet. And if you aren't familiar with our cheat sheets, they're amazing. I think Yvonne just posted one in our, in the group chat here today. That is the 2020, what bills were introduced last year that weren't passed. And throughout this presentation today, we're going to be giving you sample cheat sheets so that you can get a deeper dive on subjects that we talk about today. Okay, so let's talk now a little bit about the importance of communication, which is really kind of an underlying theme for associations. So, one thing that we do as a firm is that we monitor on a daily basis every lawsuit that's filed in Maricopa County against associations. And so we get a listing every day of every case that's filed, and it gives a description of what are the case is about. And so we pull every day any case that's filed against a homeowners association or a condominium association, and we keep track of trends. And I guess just from my perspective as a lawyer that represents associations, I feel that I've failed if my client has been sued. You need to hear that. That's a failure for the association. Now, sometimes it's unavoidable. Maybe you have somebody that is just, has mental illness and they're, have a propensity to sue, or maybe you just have a difficult person that no matter what we do as an association, they're never going to be happy. And there are cases of that, of course. But there are other cases that could have been averted. And that's really the whole theme of this class today is what advice can I give you from the trenches to help you so that your association doesn't get sued? Because let's face it, when associations get sued, it's a major hassle. It's expensive. You may have to notify your insurance company if it's, something, where it's covered by your insurance. All of these things are important because they're expensive and they take time and effort and energy of the board. So here are my best suggestions on how not to get sued, how to follow the law, how to have a great association that doesn't have a lot of problems. So first secret would be communicate. The associations that communicate with their owners on a regular basis are the associations that have the fewest problems. That is 100% accurate. And so what is a way to have outstanding communication? Here are some suggestions to have great communication with your owners. First of all, listen to your homeowners. Give them an opportunity to talk at your board meetings, at your annual meeting. Usually associations set aside a time period where they call it the owner forum. And during that owner forum, the owners can ask any question that they want, or they can make a general comment about something that's going on in the association. And that's a good opportunity for us to listen to what they have to say and to communicate back. If we can communicate back and answer quickly, or tell them we're going to look into it, that's just good customer service on the part of the board. Distributing, mailing, publishing, or posting on your website any notice of board meeting, notice of annual meetings, meeting minutes after they've been approved, financial statements, budget, year-to-date budgets. All of these are really important things that you can communicate to your owners so that they know that you are doing your best to keep them up to date about what's going on, and you're not hiding anything within your association. And so if you're communicating that to the owners, you're answering their question before it even comes up. And what we sometimes will see is owners get super agitated and want to sue if they don't know when the meetings are, if they don't know what the financial situation of the association is, if they have no opportunity to ever communicate their thoughts to the board, or if they feel the board is hiding something. They're definitely going to be more likely to be difficult for your board, and also potentially escalate it to a lawsuit. Some other things that are great ideas are having polls of your owners, having town hall meetings when you have important topics. All of these things help you better understand the will of the people, because let's face it, even though this is an unpaid job, you are expected to answer to the homeowners. And so, that is part of the job. Even though it's unpaid, we still have to be sure that we're out there listening, having our antenna up, trying to understand what people in your community want. Another really important thing would be responding to homeowner inquiries in a timely fashion. If you're not responding, or your management company isn't responding in a timely manner, it's really a poor reflection on your board. And so making sure that there's a policy in place if you do have a management company, so that they understand that the expectation is that people will be responding in a timely manner to any homeowner inquiries. Just having good customer service skills, because this is just like any business. If you're a good communicator and you're providing valuable information and responding in a timely manner, you're going to be successful. Let's see, what else? Having a newsletter, having a welcome to the association committee. These are all really important things that can help your association stay in touch with your owners. Let's switch now and talk a little bit about another topic. And I am just having a little bit of a technical difficulty here, and I'm not sure why, so I'm going to try real quickly to see if I can figure that out. Okay, anyway, so let's switch gears and talk a little bit about bidding and contracting, and how that is potentially a problem for associations. So we have a great cheat sheet on this topic called bidding and contracting. And basically associations often have, they're hiring vendors for large projects that they are working on. And there's often a lot of mistakes that are made as this process is moving forward. And so I want to share with you just a couple of stories so that you can be aware of how important it is for associations to really do their due diligence when they're hiring and contractors to help their association. So just an example that I can give you from being in the trenches is I had an association that was really pretty penny wise, pound foolish. And so they were always looking for ways to save money. And as part of doing that, sometimes they made some really big mistakes. So the mistake I'm going to talk to you about today is a bidding and contracting mistake. It was a condominium association, and they needed to redo the roofs in their community. And, they got bids from a number of different contractors, and they didn't ask for their legal counsel's advice, which is really important, making sure that any contract that your association is entering into, that your association is having the contract reviewed by your association's legal counsel, maybe even talking with the legal counsel as different issues come up through the bidding process. Well, this particular association did get bids, and their lowest bidder was an unlicensed and unbonded contractor, but they had some familiarity with this person because this person had done, you know, some work for the association previously. And so they decided to hire this particular person, and he started working on the roofs within the association. And as part of that, um, probably about 25% of the way through the project, everything was going fine. Of course, this person's the lowest bidder, so everybody on the board is really happy that this person, is getting the job done. And one day this vendor, it's a one-person show, and this vendor fell off the roof and was severely injured. And basically, a series of things started to happen that directly financially impacted the association. So, number one, uh, the person couldn't finish the job. Obviously, the person was injured, and the association started to find out that, okay, this person doesn't have any insurance, this person's not licensed, this person's not bonded. This job is half completed. There's no end in sight when the completion can be made again. Then the person that was injured decided that he was going to ask for workers' compensation. And the association didn't feel, that they owed this person anything because this person wasn't their employee. It was an independent contractor, right? But really, it ended up because this person, wasn't a corporation. He was just an individual that, the state was going to treat this person as an employee of the association. And so a series of things unfolded that the original, contract price is, I think, in the $300,000 range. Well, what ultimately happened by being penny wise and pound foolish and not hiring a licensed contractor was they had to pay all the medical bills of the individual who was injured. They had to hire another company to come in and finish the job. And a job, that the higher bid, was maybe 20 or 30% more than this person that they hired. It ended up costing the association hundreds of thousands of dollars more than if they had just hired a licensed and bonded contractor. And so we see this time and time again with associations. So what I want to do today is just give you some tips on how your association can stay out of trouble when you're having large projects that you're doing, where you're hiring a vendor, or maybe even small projects, or maybe even when you're going out to hire a new landscaping company. So here's some tips that I can give you. So the first thing is, when you're searching for a qualified vendor, make sure that you're asking others who are in the industry. So maybe your lawyer, maybe other people, ask who they've used, ask if they're happy about them, check the references of whoever is asking to, potentially do the work in your association. So do your due diligence. And part of doing your due diligence on this is making sure that you're calling, asking the references, and asking other people in the industry, hey, do you know of anybody who's good who might be able to help us on this? Another part of due diligence would be to check for licensing, the type of bonds that they have held. And the way that you can check for licensing is go to the Arizona Register of Contractors to see if they have, they're properly licensed for the job that they're doing. Do they carry a bond? How much is that bond for? Do they have insurance coverage? Ask for proof of insurance. Check with the Better Business Bureau, the Arizona Register of Contractors, to see if there have been any complaints against this vendor, especially on larger jobs. And then check out the complaint background for the vendor. And if they have a lot of complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and especially with the Arizona Register of Contractors, that is a huge red flag to me that there potentially could be an issue with this vendor. And you need to follow up with the vendor, find out if the issue has been resolved with the person who has the complaint open. The Register of Contractors information on their website will also contain, what the status of the complaint is. But I got to tell you that this is how it usually unfolds. A client will contact me after they've hired a vendor and maybe after something hasn't gone well. And while I'm on the phone with them, I'll be typing in, and this is exactly what I do. I just Google Arizona Register of Contractors, and then I click on the button that says look up information about a contractor. And I look up their name and I can see what type of license they have. I can see really everything about them, what their bond amount is, and then the complaints. And almost, I would say 99.99% of the time, when I'm hearing from a client that they're having difficulty with a roofing contractor or another contractor that would need to be licensed by the state of Arizona, 99% of the time, when I'm hearing about the problem and I'm looking it up online, guess what I'm seeing? Complaints by others against the same contractor. And so my point would be, just be careful. If you're doing your due diligence on the front end before you hire them by having your lawyer review the contract, going through this little checklist of things that I think is a great idea that we're giving you in the cheat sheet on bidding and contracting, going to the Register of Contractors online, checking out to see what, sort of complaint history that the contractor has. All of these will help you make a better decision on which contractor you ultimately decide to hire. And if you make a better decision on which contractor you ultimately decide to hire, what will happen is, you're not going to have any issues as the project progresses, which is truly what we all want. The other thing is make sure that you're hiring the right person. Like in the example I gave you at the beginning here, this little subpart on contractors, the person that they hired wasn't a professional roofer. This person wasn't even licensed. This person wasn't incorporated. And so this person wasn't the right person for the job. It was a person with the right price, but it wasn't the right person for the job. So keep that in mind. Contractors you're using for your association, this is the business. You should be using licensed, bonded, and insured contractors, no exceptions. Okay, what about architectural committees and how architectural committee reviews should be conducted? So a couple of points. The number one reason why most associations get sued are typically for decisions made by the architectural committee, which is kind of interesting. As we've been watching the cases that are filed in Maricopa County over the past few years, we would say that it's typically, I would say, architectural committees, probably number one. Vendor issues, vendor disputes between the association vendors is probably number two. And number three is probably boards breaching their fiduciary responsibilities to an association. So let's talk a little bit about architectural committee review. So we have a really great cheat sheet that is on the architectural committee and how the architectural committee should function. And we're going to be sharing that with you in the chat here in a minute. And one thing to remember on our cheat sheets is all of our cheat sheets are also listed on our website. And our website is mulcahylawfirm.com. On the homepage of our website, we have all of our cheat sheets. And so if you're seeing it in the chat here today and you want to go back and reference it later, just go to our website. And over 60 cheat sheets are there on different topics. Just type in the keywords and you'll find all of them right there. We also have a listing of all of them. Okay, so what happens to get an architectural, to get somebody so upset about architectural committee review that the association ultimately gets sued? Let me tell you a quick little story that this is a really good example. So we have an association. This is this public case. I can tell you about this. It's been, it's in Maricopa County. It has been in Maricopa County from years ago. An association in Fountain Hills, really great, high quality association, wonderful board members. They had an owner submit an application to have a gate at the end of the owner's driveway. And this would be like an access gate. So in order to go into the driveway, the gate would have to be opened. This was the first time that this association had ever received a request like this because the lots were configured in such a way that it just didn't make sense to have a gate at the end of the driveway. And so it was a unique situation. And also the association had a gate, an access controlled gate at the entrance of the association. So most people don't have a double gate, right? And the lot wasn't configured in a way that it would make sense. So the owner submits an application to this particular association to install a gate on their property, to allow access in and out of their driveway. So like I said, association had never had one of these like this before. And the association's CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, said that the association had 30 days to approve or disapprove any sort of architectural change on the property. And installing a gate in the driveway was definitely a change that needed architectural approval. So homeowner submits the application, the architectural committee takes a look at it, they don't know what to do. So they write back, and really the interesting thing on this gate was kind of a nightmare, because the way that the lot was configured was that in order for the gate to open, it had to swing on the neighbor's property. Okay, so imagine that if you were the neighbor, that when your neighbor, every time they drove into their driveway, the gate would have to open and the gate would flip onto your property. Okay, that's obviously not going to be something that's acceptable, right? So the architectural committee received this application and they didn't know what to do with it. So they wrote back to the owner and asked for more information. And, frankly just said, hey, we've never had one of these before, we need more information. So in the meantime, the application was submitted, 30 days passed. The owner responded back to the request for more information after the 30th day had expired and said, it has now been approved because you didn't act. Your CC&R say you have to approve or disapprove an application within 30 days, or it's approved. It's approved. You didn't do either within 30 days. And the association's position, of course, was, well, we didn't approve it, but we asked for more information. And there was, we believe that, we had responded, within the 30 days, and that should be enough. Well, ultimately, this ended up in a lawsuit and by the neighbor, because the owner installed the gate. And ultimately, it just became a mess, right? An expensive, drawn out, antagonistic, Hatfield and McCoy's neighbor to neighbor issue, and the association's a defendant, the owner's a defendant that installed the gate, the neighbor's a plaintiff. It was just a mess. So what's the, kind of the rule of thumb that we can learn from that story? So your CC&Rs for your association have a provision that typically will address what the architectural committee does, what they can review, how long they have to review the applications. You have to really carefully follow that. So let's give some practice pointers so that your association doesn't get sued for, an architectural review that goes bad. So the first thing that I would say is, the committee members who are serving on the architectural committee, sometimes it's in fact the board that's serving on the architectural committee. They need to read what that section says in the CC&Rs that pertains to architectural committees. And so they need to be familiar with the standards, the aesthetics, the rules of the association, and they need to be able to apply those to every request that is given to your association. And that committee must strictly adhere to the timelines for approval or disapproval. And in the case of the gate that we talked about in that association, the association should have just denied it. The association's architectural committee should have denied it in writing and asked for more information at the same time. Okay, and another thing that comes up is maybe somebody submits something for something that's never been done before, like a gazebo or a large play structure. If the committee's not quite sure what to do, reach out to your manager, reach out to your association's attorney and ask for their advice. That's what we call preventative legal. We're preventing problems so that you're not going to have a lot of issues in the future. See what their opinion is. And I'm sure I get boards call me all the time on situations like this, architectural committees, managers, and I can look at an issue and say, here's what your documents say. Here's some issues that I think that you may have, and here's what I think you should do. And obviously, anytime you deny a request, there's always a threat that you may be sued. And so you want to make sure that the grounds that you're denying it for are clearly laid out so that the owner understands why it's been denied. And if there's some other way that they can resubmit it, give them some advice, help them out. If you resubmitted it this way, this would be something that we would carefully consider, in the future. Let's see, let's talk a little bit about how the process works with the architectural committee. You should have a special form for owners to submit that asks for detailed drawings and information regarding the type of materials that are going to be used, etc. That will be very important for your association. You also want to, make sure that you have accurate records. So as you're receiving these forms, and they should go to one place so that they're not just being like dropped off on somebody's front porch under a flower pot, because you may not see it. So have one place, uniform place that they're submitted to. They should be date stamped the day that they come in, and then there should be, timely action on every application. And it's important to keep accurate records. Remember that if your architectural committee is a regularly scheduled committee that has meetings regularly scheduled, you have to comply with the open meeting law. So that's something that sometimes architectural committees get tripped up with. Most of our architectural committees don't meet regularly. So they don't always meet the first Monday of the month. So that's not something that they are worrying about. The open meeting law, and they may have their meetings virtually right now during the pandemic, or some of them are even making decisions by email. The architectural review committee's responsibility, you need to put on the form whether it's approved or disapproved. If you're asking for more information, still we suggest that you disapprove it. If there's an appeal process, you want to make sure that you let them know that in the architectural committee denial, so that they're aware that if lots of times the architectural committee denies something, the owner has the right to appeal to the board of directors. So keep all of those things in mind as you're reviewing applications. And don't forget the most important thing, talk to your trusted advisors. When you get a tough one, and there are tough ones that come up, make sure that you're reaching out to your advisors and ask their opinion. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you. And it can keep you out of trouble. I just literally had a question on this morning, where we had an association that had approved a fence on a particular lot in an association. And the person had done this drawing that was really inadequate and didn't tell much about the materials that they were using, and the architectural committee approved it. And, it's really hard to go back after the fact and say, no, you can't do that because your application wasn't clear enough. They approved it, based on limited information that they had. And so in that case, the association may be stuck with that application being approved and may have to allow it. Okay, a couple other things I want to mention. The importance of the annual audit. We have a cheat sheet that talks about this. It's on our top 10 cheat sheet. I think it's number 4. And we're going to be sharing that with you shortly if we haven't already. Basically, some things to remember are that you have to have an audit review or compilation as an association of your financials every year. If your documents require the audit to be done by a CPA, you must have the CPA do the audit. There's no way around it. Otherwise, really anybody can do the review or compilation. Of course, we recommend that you have somebody with expertise, like your CPA, do that. But the law leaves a little bit of a loophole there. So if you want to have a special committee, or you want to have an independent party review or do a compilation of your documents, the law does allow you to do that. But of course, best practices would be have your CPA do all of this. So don't forget, you have to do that audit review or compilation. So we just closed the books on 2020. That will need to be done by June 30th of 2021. And then any owner that requests to see it, you'll have to provide a copy of that to them through a records. If they make a records request, you would be required to show that audit review or compilation to any owner. Now, best practices for an association would be is if you have an audit done by a CPA, just make that available to your owners already without them even having to ask for it, because that would show good communication and good faith that, hey, everything's in check here with our financial records. Okay, another topic that we see a lot of lawsuits about is records requests. Owners are entitled to see the books and records of an association. And basically, they can see almost everything. So associations that are wanting to play hide the ball and not give records to owners, it's really not smart. You want to be transparent. You want owners to feel that if there's a document that they want to see, they're entitled to see it. So let me just give you a quick 411 on what the law says on this. All financial records and other records of the association must be made reasonably available for inspection if an owner requests to see them. We have to provide those records to the owner within 10 business days of the request. There are certain things that owners aren't allowed to see, very few, mind you, but there are some things that they can't see, like opinion letters from your attorney. or opinion emails from your attorney or executive session minutes. They also aren't entitled to see how much you're paying a vendor, although there's so many other places that they can find that, like in the budget or the check register, that we, generally encourage our boards just to provide that as a transparency thing. So anytime we're involved in a lawsuit, they wouldn't be entitled to see anything pertaining to, the lawsuit either. So basically everything's fair game except for those few small topics. And you can see from our cheat sheet that we shared with you a few minutes ago, the top 10 one, the records request response is number 10 on that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about if an owner wants to have copies of the records, we have to provide that to the owner. It's 15 cents per page. And let me just give you some from the trenches advice here about how to handle records requests. So sometimes you'll get an owner that will make a records request for like 150 documents or 10,000 documents or whatever. And usually the people that are making records requests, they're unhappy about something else. Occasionally you'll get somebody who's like the type of personality that, is like really detailed and they just want to dig in and look at the financials of the association. And that's totally fine. But usually what we see is somebody who's really angry about something else, a violation letter that they received, or their neighbor has a violation and they're really angry about it. And so if you get a records request from an owner and it's really large, our recommendation, and this really is great advice, is pick up the phone, call them, the owner that's making the request, and talk about what's going on. Ask them, is there any way that we can help you find exactly what you're looking for without having to, do this significant amount of documents for you. Sometimes they're just trying to harass you and you're going to have to do it no matter what. But most times, if I'm calling the owner, usually large records requests come to me as the attorney for the association. I'll call the owner and say, hey, we received your records request and you asked for a lot of documents. Can we talk about what you're looking for? And can I help you narrow it down so that you actually find what you're looking for? And sometimes, I've had ones where it's like $10,000 worth of, copies that we whittled down to like 8 pieces of paper. So just having good communication right there, and also maybe getting to the root of the problem and trying to solve that is a great tip. Another thing is most of our records now are electronic, and so there's really no need to charge the 15 cents per page for copies. So if somebody's making a records request to us, I just pop it to them by email as a sign of good faith and to let them know that, hey, we're here to help you. We're not hiding anything. And because there was no copy that was done here, I'm just giving this to you at no charge. Now, obviously, if you have somebody that is putting you through the ringer and you're having records requests all the time, and it's taking a lot of time and resources, I probably would charge the 15 cents per page and not give them everything by email. So you just have to kind of see how these things play out. An important little factor that I think you need to know is that we can't charge for the time that we incur. We can't charge the owner for the time that we incur in collecting the records. Now, some of you may have a management company that may be part of their management agreement that the association pays that charge. And that's a pretty common charge that I see in the management agreements that we review, but you can't pass that charge on to the owner for the management company's time in putting together the records. So that's just an expense that the association will have to pay out of, their general funds. So those are probably my best tips on records requests. How do associations get sued? They ignore records requests. They refuse to give documents. They don't share documents that exist. They play hide the ball. Don't play hide the ball. Trust me, it's going to cost you way more in legal fees to fight it. And it's going to be a big hassle. And it's just a bad example of an association not being transparent, creating problems for yourself by hiding things. It's just really not smart to do. And if you're a homeowner who's disgruntled, and actually I had this experience because I've served on my board on and off for 14 years now. And I had a little stint in there where I was a disgruntled owner and I was requesting documents from my association and they were refusing to give them to me. And I know how angry I was when I had to do a public records request with the city to get documents. And then I found out, that basically the association was hiding it from me. And that really aggravated me. So don't do that to your owners. It's going to create a lot more hassles for you down the road. We're not hiding anything. This is our community, our association. Everybody's a part of it, and everybody's entitled to see records with very few exceptions, as are outlined on my cheat sheet. It's number 10 on the top 10 cheat sheet, and as I outlined, previously in this call. Okay, so we have just a couple more subjects that we're going to talk about, and we've got perfect timings. The next topic we're going to talk about is reserve funds, and this is just an important topic for associations. Associations having it's like a savings account as a reserve account. The importance of having it, the importance for your homeowners to be able to get financing, the importance for your homeowners to be able to sell their properties is really important that the association has reserves. So what is a reserve? A reserve is like a savings account for the association, and you're saving for long-term capital improvements in your association. And so basically, what you're doing is planning. You're planning for the future of items that are big ticket items, capital improvement areas in your association, like if you're a condominium, your roofs, your common area pool, your clubhouse. If you're a planned community, it may be your roads, if you're responsible for maintaining them, your clubhouse, anything that you're maintaining that has a useful life is going to fall under that category. And so good business planning requires you to, have a reserve account. And how do you know how much money you should be putting in there? You should be hiring a qualified reserve specialist. And we have a cheat sheet on this topic, which we're going to be sharing with you in the comment section. And basically what the cheat sheet says is it's just a great overview of here's what a reserve account is. Here's what a reserve study does. And what we recommend is that associations hire reserve specialists who are companies that do reserve studies. And the cost to do that's usually somewhere between $800, and we've seen ones as high as $3,000 or $4,000 for really large master plan communities with like over 3,000 lots. And basically, they give you the roadmap. They come out to your property, they write down into the reserve everything that you're responsible for maintaining, and they give it a useful life. Like, for example, your roads may need to be resurfaced every 11 years, or your pools may need to have replastering every 8 years. And then they come up with a plan. Okay, this is how much money we have in 2021. We know that the pool needs to be replastered, let's say, based upon the useful life left in 4 years. And they calculate how much money we should be putting away each year to get us to have enough money when it comes time to replaster the pool. It is just really good business planning. And so we recommend that you hire a reserve study company. They're called reserve specialists to help your associations with it because they have the expertise. And we recommend that you update your reserve study. You talk to the reserve specialist, but what we've heard as the rule of thumb is about every 5 to 6 to 7 years, you should really be updating your reserve study. Okay, what does the law in Arizona say about reserves and reserve studies? It doesn't say much. It doesn't require a reserve study. It doesn't require a reserve account. But honestly, the legislature is a little behind on that because there's states all around the country in the United States that have this requirement, and it's truly it's best business judgment to be doing this. So what you do have to share under Arizona law is when there's a buyer who is purchasing a unit or lot in your association, you do have to share how much money you have in your reserve account. And if you have a reserve study, you have to give the owner a copy of the reserve study. And, this is just really important for associations because I wouldn't want to buy a house in an association or a condo in an association where they have no money in the reserves. Why? Because I'm going to be paying as a new owner. I'm going to be paying for all that deferred maintenance. Insurance companies look at this, and also definitely companies that are providing loans to owners in your association. If they see an inadequate reserve, they may not give a loan. Traditional financing may not be able to be obtained regarding this for your association. So really important that you have a reserve study, that you're funding the reserve every month according to what the reserve study is telling you to do, so that you have enough money at the end of the day to pay as those capital improvements need to be replaced or fixed over time. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our last topic, which is defamation. I threw this one in there because we're starting to see more lawsuits on this. So what is defamation? In Arizona, anyone who publishes a false statement false and defamatory communication regarding a private person concerning a public official or a public figure in relation to a private matter is subject to liability. But only if that person knows the statement is false and defames the other, or acts in a reckless disregard of these matters, or acts negligently in failing to ascertain them. So really, how do we see this come around in associations? So social media. Maybe we have people getting into it on social media in an association. Maybe you've got a next door page for your association or a Facebook page, or sometimes we see groups that start like a little side Facebook page for an association, like Concerned Citizens of ABC Association. And people start saying things on social media in writing and about the board. And some of the stuff might be false, some of it might be a stretch, whatever. And now we start getting people saying, I want to sue for defamation. And so my recommendations to the owners and to the managers and to the board members that are on this Zoom call today would be very careful what you say about others in board meetings, in minutes, on social media, in letters to the community, in email blasts to the community. Anytime you are sending something out that says something about another person, you should be thinking, is it true? Is it kind? I guess that's kind of like a human side of this. But, really be careful. This is a professional business you're running. And even though it's a nonprofit and you're not getting paid as a board member, you have to treat this as a business. And so really be mindful of what you're saying in emails, anytime you're writing something about somebody else, because this could come back to bite you in the form of a defamation lawsuit. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. It's really hard to prove defamation against another person in an association setting, but it's becoming more and more common that people are winning these lawsuits. In the past, it was less likely. Now I would say, with all the documentation that people have on social media and everything else, it's easy to find people saying things about other people on social media. And if it can be proven that it's false, that person potentially may have a defamation claim against the other private person. So be really careful about that. And remember too, like if you look in the upper right-hand corner of this meeting here today, it says recording, right? A lot of you have now transitioned to virtual meetings, and all these meetings are being taped. So every little comment is being recorded and kept possibly in the archives of the association. So we want to be extra careful that any comment that we're saying is professional. Okay, last but not least, I don't want to leave this out. We have 1 minute left, so I want to make sure that I'm, talking about this a little bit today. Just in light of the coronavirus pandemic, please be mindful of the fact that you really should be having virtual meetings right now for your community and your board. We have a great cheat sheet on this called Virtual Meetings. I highly recommend that your associations take a look at it if you haven't yet transitioned to having virtual meetings. Has some great tips for regular board meetings, annual meetings, and Yvonne just shared it in the group chat here. Please take some time to review that. We also have a great cheat sheet on tips for reopening your common areas. Some people don't know that you have to have a special notice at your pool, and you'll want to make sure that you read that reopening cheat sheet that we have on reopening your common areas, because you do need to have that notice at your pool right now. The governor ordered it months ago. And I just want to make sure that you have the special language that they're requiring and that you're not allowing groups of more than 10 to congregate at the pool. Okay, so that's it for our tips from the trenches. Hopefully I gave you some good advice that will keep you out of trouble and that will prevent you from being sued. The best piece of closing advice I can give you before we go into the questions is practice preventative legal. What does that mean? That means reaching out to your legal counsel before a problem explodes. So when an issue comes up, be preventative. Call the attorney, talk to your trusted advisors, get advice on the front end before this explodes into something that's going to cost your association $10,000, $100,000, $150,000, or result in an insurance claim. So be mindful of that. Use preventative legal, rely on your advisors to help you so that you make good choices and you don't have a lot of financial exposure and a lot of hassles for your association.